I still remember the way my mother said it, flat, almost bored, like she was talking about the weather. "We'll pay you nothing." She didn't even look at my daughter when she said it. My 13-year-old stood there in my parents' kitchen, hands clenched around the hem of her hoodie, cheeks red from standing over a hot stove for weeks, 6 weeks, 42 days of early mornings, late nights, and the kind of exhaustion no kid should have to explain to adults who were supposed to love her. I was right there. I heard every word, and I swear, something in me cracked so quietly I didn't realize it until much later. It started as a family favor. That's how my mom pitched it. Sweet voice on the phone, calling me like she always did when she wanted something but didn't want to say it outright. "Your father and I are overwhelmed," she said. "You know how busy the catering business gets in summer? We could really use some help." I should have known better. I always should have known better. When I hesitated, she added, "It would be good for your daughter. Teach her responsibility, work ethic. Plus, we'll take care of her. Family helps family." My daughter lit up when I told her. She'd always wanted to earn her own money, save up for a laptop she dreamed about using for school and art. She asked the question I didn't. "Will I get paid?" I asked my mom directly. I remember standing in my living room, phone pressed to my ear, watching my daughter pace nervously. "Of course," my mom laughed. "We're not monsters. We'll figure something out." That should have been my first red flag. "Figure something out" was my mother's favorite phrase when she planned to do absolutely nothing. Still, I agreed, against my gut, against years of knowing exactly who she was. The first week, my daughter came home exhausted but excited. She talked about learning how to prep food, how my dad showed her how to measure spices, how customers smiled at her, her smell like onions and oil, her hair pulled back too tight, fingers nicked with tiny cuts she'd tried to hide. "They said I'm really good," she told me one night, collapsing onto the couch. "Grandma said I'm a natural." By week 2, the excitement faded. She stopped smiling when she talked about it. She started rubbing her wrists at night, shoulders sore from carrying trays that were too heavy. "They had me there 10 hours today. I didn't even get a break." I called my mom. I tried to sound casual. "She's 13. That's a long day." "Oh, please," my mom snapped. "Kids these days are lazy. She's learning discipline. Be grateful." Week 3, my daughter cried in the shower because her feet hurt so bad she couldn't stand still. I found blisters on her heels, raw and angry. "They said I can't sit," she whispered. "Customers might see." Something ugly twisted in my stomach, but my parents kept insisting it was temporary, just until a big event passed, just until the season slowed down. By week 5, my daughter stopped asking if she was doing a good job. She started asking if she was allowed to quit. That's when I told her we'd talk about payment soon, that Grandma and Grandpa would make it right. I believed that, or maybe I needed to believe it. The 6th week ended on a Sunday night. My daughter stood in the kitchen washing dishes at my parents' place, hands shaking from exhaustion. My mom sat at the table with her ledger, tapping her pen. "So," I said, trying to sound calm, "let's talk about her pay." My mom didn't look up. "What pay?" I laughed because I thought she was joking. "She's been working here for 6 weeks, full shifts." That's when my mom finally looked up. Her eyes were cold, calculating. "She's family," she said. "Family doesn't charge family." My daughter froze, slowly turned around. "But you said," she started. My mom cut her off. "You're a child. You don't need money." I felt heat rush to my face. "You promised." My dad cleared his throat but said nothing. He stared at the table like it might save him. My mom leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. "We fed her. That's payment." The room went silent. I looked at my daughter's face as realization settled in. Confusion first, then humiliation, then something darker, something that didn't belong on a 13-year-old. "So, nothing?" she asked softly. My mom shrugged. Nothing. That was the moment I understood this wasn't about money. It was about power. About teaching my daughter the same lesson my mother had taught me my whole life, that her time, her effort, her pain meant nothing if it benefited someone else. I grabbed my daughter's bag and told her to put her shoes on. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely zip it. My mom scoffed. "Don't be dramatic." But as we walked out, I saw my daughter wipe her face with her sleeve, like she was embarrassed to cry in front of them. That image burned itself into my brain. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong, because the next morning my phone exploded with messages. My mom telling the family I stole free help, my aunt calling me ungrateful, my cousin posting vague things online about raising entitled kids, and then came the voicemail that made my blood run cold. "If you think this is over," my mother said, voice sweet and venomous, "you have no idea what you've started." I stared at my phone, my daughter sitting across from me at the table, silent, eyes hollow. That's when I realized my mother wasn't done with us. Not even close. The first thing I did was block my mom's number. I didn't announce it. I didn't tell anyone. I just stared at her name on my screen, thumb hovering, and pressed the button. The silence afterward felt unreal, like the air right after a storm, when you're not sure if it's really over. My daughter noticed immediately. "Did Grandma call?" she asked, not looking up from her cereal. "No," I said, "and she won't." She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. Kids always sense when adults are lying to themselves. For 2 days, things were quiet. Too quiet. My mom never stayed quiet when she felt challenged. Silence was just her inhaling. On the 3rd day, the school called. "Your daughter didn't turn in her group project," the counselor said. "She told her teacher she didn't have time." I closed my eyes. That project had been her pride. She'd talked about it for weeks. That night, I found her sitting on her bed, staring at nothing. "They keep asking me to help again," she said. "They say Grandma's business is struggling. They say I owe them." "Who's they?" She hesitated. "Aunt Lisa? Uncle Rob? Grandma's friends? They messaged me." My chest tightened. "They're messaging you?" She handed me her phone. What I saw made my hands go cold. Messages telling her she was selfish, that she should be grateful, that she embarrassed the family. One message said, "You're lucky anyone feeds you." 13 years old, and grown adults were saying this to her. I felt something in me snap. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a clean break. I took her phone and blocked every number, every account. I told her she didn't owe anyone a response, an explanation, or a single tear. "But Grandma said," I started. "I don't care what she said," I cut in, sharper than I meant to. Then I softened. "You didn't do anything wrong." She looked at me like she wasn't sure I was telling the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying my childhood in flashes, my mom telling me I should be thankful for scraps, reminding me who paid the bills, who owned my time. I'd sworn I'd never let that touch my daughter, yet somehow it had. A week later, my mom showed up at my door. No call, no warning. I opened it before I realized what I was doing, and there she stood, arms crossed, lips pressed tight, like she was the one who'd been wronged. "You embarrassed me," she said, stepping inside without waiting to be invited. I closed the door slowly. "You used my child." She laughed, actually laughed. "She helped out. Don't twist this." "She worked 6 weeks. You promised to pay her." My mom waved her hand. "I never agreed to a number." My daughter stood frozen at the end of the hallway, listening. "That's enough," I said. "You need to leave." My mom's eyes flicked toward my daughter. "You've made her soft," she said. "She needs to learn how the world works." I stepped between them. "Not from you."
That's when her expression changed. Not anger, not shock, satisfaction. She leaned closer. You think you've won. You think blocking me makes you powerful. She leaned closer. I paid a lot of things when you were younger. People remember that. My stomach dropped. The next day, my landlord called. There's been a complaint, he said, about unpaid rent. I laughed because it was ridiculous. I'd never missed a payment. But then he sent me a screenshot, an email from my mother's address, claiming I'd borrowed money and refused to repay it. Fake numbers, fake dates, convincing enough to make someone pause. I felt dizzy. This isn't real. I know, he said carefully, but I have to look into it. By the end of the week, my credit card company flagged suspicious activity. My daughter's school received a call questioning my stability. Someone even contacted child services, claiming my home environment was unsafe. Every move was precise, calculated, familiar. My mother wasn't punishing me for leaving. She was punishing me for protecting my daughter. One night, as I was tucking her in, she grabbed my hand. Is this my fault? She asked. That question hurt worse than anything my mom had done. No, I said, voice shaking. Never. She nodded, but fear still sat heavy in her eyes. And that's when I realized something terrifying. My mother didn't just want control back, she wanted my daughter to see what happens when you say no. And I knew, deep down, this was only the beginning.
I started documenting everything after that. Every call, every email, every weird coincidence that felt a little too intentional to be random. Screenshots filled my phone, timestamps scribbled into a notebook I kept hidden in the back of a drawer. I didn't tell my daughter what I was doing. I didn't want her carrying my fear on her shoulders. Outwardly, I tried to keep life normal. Lunches packed, homework checked, jokes at dinner. Inside, I was living with my jaw clenched so tight my head ached constantly. 2 weeks after the landlord call, my mom escalated. She sent a letter, an actual envelope. My handwriting froze when I saw her name in the corner, that familiar looped cursive I'd learned to recognize before I could read. Inside was a typed page. No greeting. It claimed my daughter had volunteered. It listed hours, duties. It framed the whole thing as educational exposure. At the bottom was a sentence that made my hands shake. Any attempt to misrepresent this arrangement could have legal consequences. Legal consequences? For a 13-year-old? I didn't show the letter to my daughter. I shredded it instead, fed it slowly into the trash like I needed to see it destroyed. That night, my daughter asked me something out of nowhere. Did Grandma ever make you work when you were my age? I hesitated just a second too long. Yes, I said. She nodded. Did she ever pay you? No. She looked down at her hands. Did you ever get an apology? I swallowed. No. She was quiet for a long time. Then why is she so mad at me? She asked. I didn't have an answer that wouldn't break something in her. The next hit came from school. The counselor asked to meet privately. Her tone was careful, the kind adults use when they think they're being kind. We've received concerns, she said, about family conflict, pressure being placed on your daughter. I felt my stomach drop. From who? She hesitated. A relative. My mom. She's been through enough, I said. She was exploited. That's what caused the stress. The counselor nodded, but I could tell the seed of doubt had already been planted. That's what my mother was good at. She never told outright lies. She nudged, suggested, let other people fill in the gaps. A few days later, my daughter came home pale. Someone talked to me today, she said quietly. Who? A lady. She said she was just checking in. My hands went numb. Did she say why? She asked if I feel safe, my daughter said. She asked if you ever yell. My vision blurred for a second. What did you say? She said you're tired a lot, she replied honestly.
and that grandma scares me. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I kept imagining my daughter being taken, not because I'd done anything wrong, but because my mother knew exactly how to weaponize concern. The next week, my mom finally broke her silence. She called from a new number. "I can make all of this go away," she said calmly. "You're being stubborn." "What do you want?" I asked. An apology, I expected. Control. Access. "She wants her back at the business," she said. "Just weekends, no drama." "No," I said. She sighed. "You're forcing my hand." I hung up, shaking. 2 days later, my aunt showed up at my door. She didn't knock, she rang the bell over and over until my daughter retreated to her room. "You've turned everyone against your mother," my aunt hissed. "Do you know how she cries at night?" I laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "Do you know my daughter cried in the shower because her feet were bleeding?" My aunt blinked. "She never said that." "Of course she didn't. She's telling people you're unstable," my aunt said, "that you're manipulating your kid." Something clicked then. Not panic, clarity. This wasn't just retaliation. This was preparation. They were building a version of me that looked dangerous enough to justify whatever came next. That night, I sat at my kitchen table long after my daughter went to bed, staring at my phone. I opened old photos. Birthday parties, holidays, my mother's arm wrapped possessively around my daughter, smiling like she owned her. I realized something sickening. My mom didn't see my daughter as a child. She saw her as leverage. And once that thought took root, I couldn't unsee it. Because the very next morning, I got an email that made my blood run cold. It was from a lawyer, my mother's lawyer, claiming unpaid training compensation, claiming damages, claiming my daughter's labor had caused financial confusion. They were threatening to sue a 13-year-old. I sat there, hands trembling, listening to my daughter sing softly in her room, unaware, and for the first time, the fear shifted, because I realized my mother had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. And if she thought I was going to fold, she didn't know me anymore. Not even a little.
I didn't tell my daughter about the lawyer email. I read it 3 times, slowly, like if I stared long enough, the words might rearrange themselves into something less insane. They didn't. It was cold, formal, carefully vague, and clearly written by someone who had no problem sleeping at night. Training compensation. For a 13-year-old. I closed my laptop and sat there, listening to the hum of the fridge, my heart beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. I'd grown up with my mother's cruelty, but seeing it aimed at my child did something different to me. It stripped away hesitation, guilt, the reflex to smooth things over. I called a lawyer the next morning. She listened without interrupting, which already felt like mercy. When I finished, there was a long pause. "They're bluffing," she said finally, "but it's an aggressive bluff." "What about the CPS check, the school, the landlord?" She sighed. "That's where it gets messy. Not dangerous, yet, but messy. Yet." That word sat heavy in my chest. When I picked my daughter up from school that day, she looked smaller somehow, like the world had pressed in on her while I wasn't watching. "Did I do something wrong again?" she asked as soon as she got in the car. "No," I said quickly. "Why would you think that?" She shrugged. "People keep asking questions." That night, she had a nightmare. I found her curled into herself, breathing fast, whispering that she didn't want to go back, that she'd work harder, that she'd be better. I held her until her breathing slowed, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. The next escalation came fast. My mom posted online. Not directly about us, she was smarter than that. It was a long post about betrayal, about sacrifices mothers make, about being used by ungrateful children. People flooded the comments with sympathy, heart emojis, support.
Someone tagged me. I felt sick. The next day, my daughter's friend stopped talking to her, then another. By the end of the week, she sat alone at lunch. "They say my family is crazy," she said quietly that night. "They say your mom told their parents." That's when I realized my mother wasn't just trying to win, she was trying to isolate us. I started moving differently. I walked my daughter to school even when she said she didn't need it. I double-checked locks. I stopped answering unknown numbers. I told my boss what was happening before someone else told a twisted version. Then, one afternoon, I came home to find my mailbox stuffed with envelopes, bills I didn't recognize, notices I'd already paid. One envelope had no return address. Inside was a photocopy of an old photo, my daughter in my mother's kitchen, smiling, apron too big for her. On the back, written in pen, were 4 words. She was happy here. I sat on the floor shaking. That night, my mom showed up again. This time, she didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She sat on my couch like she belonged there, hands folded neatly in her lap. "You're exhausting her," she said gently. "Look at her." My daughter stood behind me, fingers digging into my shirt. "You could stop all of this. One apology, one conversation. You don't want her growing up with all this tension." I laughed, a short, broken sound. "You mean the tension you created?" My mom's eyes hardened. "Careful." That word again. "You think you're protecting her, but the world isn't kind to girls who don't learn their place early." That was it. That was the sentence. "Get out," I said. She stood slowly, smoothing her coat. "You'll regret this," she said calmly, "when she asks why her life fell apart." After she left, my daughter asked, "Is Grandma going to take me?" My heart shattered. "No," I said, pulling her close. "I won't let anyone take you." But the truth was, I didn't know how far my mother would go, because 2 days later, the lawyer called back. They've filed something, not a full lawsuit, a complaint, enough to force a response. I looked at my daughter, bent over her homework, chewing on her pencil, trying so hard to be normal. "How bad is it?" The lawyer paused. "Your mother is trying to establish a pattern, and patterns only work if people believe them." That night, after my daughter fell asleep, I went through old boxes I hadn't opened in years. Photos, letters, school records, anything that showed who my mother really was. And that's when I found it. A notebook, mine, filled with entries from when I was 13. Complaints about working late, about being called ungrateful, about being told I owed her everything. I sat there in the dark, notebook open on my lap, tears sliding down my face. Because suddenly, everything made sense. My mother wasn't reacting to my daughter, she was reliving me, and she was determined to finish what she started. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on the door. 2 people stood outside. Official badges. One of them smiled politely. "We're here to ask a few questions. About your daughter." I remember noticing the smallest, stupidest detail in that moment. One of them had a coffee stain on their sleeve. That's what my brain latched onto while my heart tried to punch its way out of my chest. They sat at my kitchen table, not threatening, not kind, just neutral. The most terrifying tone there is. "We've received concerns," the woman said. "We're here to make sure your daughter is safe." My daughter sat beside me, knees pulled to her chest, quiet in a way that didn't feel like her. I answered every question slowly, carefully. I didn't overshare, I didn't defend myself too hard. I remembered every article I'd ever read about how easily the wrong tone could be misread. They asked about discipline, about finances, about stress. Then one of them asked, "Does she ever work?" I felt my throat tighten. Not anymore. My daughter looked up. "I don't want to go back," she said suddenly. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop.
They said I wasn't worth paying. Grandma said I should be grateful. The room went still. The woman glanced at her clipboard. Who said that? My daughter looked at me like she was asking permission to tell the truth. I nodded. They left an hour later. Polite, professional, uncommitted. We'll be in touch, they said. That night, my mom posted again. This time, it was about false accusations and being punished for generosity. Someone commented, "Kids lie." I shut my laptop so hard it hurt my fingers. The lawyer told me the complaint would probably go nowhere. Probably. She also told me something that stuck with me. Your mother is testing your endurance. And she was right. Because the attacks didn't stop. They slowed, they shifted, like she was adjusting her aim. My daughter stopped sleeping through the night. She started flinching when the doorbell rang. Once, I heard her whispering to herself, practicing what she'd say if they came back. That broke something in me I didn't know could still break. Then, out of nowhere, my mom sent a message, not to me, to my daughter. It came through an old email account we'd forgotten to lock down. I miss you. I never meant to hurt you. Your mom is confused. Come talk to me. My daughter showed me, hands shaking. She says she loves me, she whispered, but I don't feel safe. That sentence will live inside me forever. I forwarded the email to the lawyer, added it to the folder, another brick in the wall. Weeks passed. The CPS follow-up never came. The complaint quietly stalled. People stopped talking as loudly. And just like that, the storm didn't end, but it moved farther away. One night, my daughter asked, "Do you think she'll ever say sorry?" I stared at the ceiling for a long time before answering. "I don't know," I said honestly. She nodded. "I don't think she knows how." We didn't celebrate. There was no victory moment, just survival, just breathing again. But sometimes, late at night, I still wonder what my mother tells herself, whether she believes her own version now, whether she's waiting. And sometimes I catch my daughter watching the door, like part of her still expects someone to knock. This isn't over. I can feel that. Some stories don't end cleanly. They pause, they wait, they hold their breath. And maybe that's the scariest part. If this story hit you in the chest, if it made you angry, uncomfortable, or reminded you of someone you know, don't scroll past it. Like this video so more people hear it. Share it because silence is exactly what people like her count on. And subscribe because some stories don't end when you think they do. And this one definitely isn't finished yet.